How do you calibrate a calorie deficit for yourself? Like, how do you figure out what your calorie needs are? And then I guess more importantly, how do you know for sure whether or not you're in a calorie deficit?
So when you're setting up a calorie deficit or calorie surplus, depending on what you want to do, you can technically use any online calculator to get a general guideline. But the reality is that all these calculators are essentially just guesstimates at best anyways. And so your adjustments are going to be made based off of your progress. And nobody can really tell that specifically until you start to follow a person for 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks and see how they go. And that's assuming that they're actually consistent and adherent with the nutrition itself. But for rate of loss, it depends on current body composition based on where you are now as to what a proper rate of loss would be. And I like to say if you're an obese person, anywhere from 2-3 pounds per week can be a good rate of loss. If you go significantly above this, in the beginning, it likely will be because you're going to be losing some muscle glycogen and water as you change your diet up. So within the first month, when people say, hey, look, I'm losing like 6 or 8 pounds every 2 weeks, okay, that's fine. It's not a big problem, and as long as you start to normalize over time as you're consistent with this diet, you're going to fall into the right rate. So for the obese, it's going to be like 2 or 3 pounds. For a normal weight person, normal body composition person, you're probably going to be in 1 pound, 2 pounds maybe if you're lucky. And then the more advanced, leaner people are going to be about 0.5 pounds per week. And it's not going to be every week, but this is what we look at over time. You might find that, for 2 weeks you didn't lose any weight, and then over a month you've lost 1 to 2 pounds or whatever it is. And so there are certainly water weight shifts that you have to be aware of, but those are a good guideline for rough weight loss rates over time. Now, when we're building lean muscle, we have maybe even a harder time doing that mentally and emotionally than losing body fat, because at least when we're losing body fat, we can see changes on the scale rather regularly. We can see improvements in body composition. I mean, it's always nice to start to see body fat coming off your body, right? When you're building lean muscle takes so long to build that you often feel like you're getting fluffier before it actually starts to look better.
Story of my life.
Right, because it feels like you're building lean. You might even be building lean muscle underneath the layer of fat that you're not getting rid of right now because we know that it's not that stage in the journey.
Every time I try to bulk, I just feel like I'm getting fatter.
Yeah, and so people need guidelines for doing this type of thing. And what I would recommend is monitoring rate of weight gain over time. And a good rough rate of weight gain for a month is in beginners 2% of total body weight, in intermediates 1% of total body weight, and in advanced 0.5% of total body weight. And so if you're monitoring these rates of gain, you can feel a little bit more comfortable assuming that you have a proper weight training program in play, that you're gaining as much lean muscle as possible and as little body fat as possible. But at least this gives somebody a guide to say, okay, am I in this right range? Am I doing this correctly? Because if you don't have that, you question yourself constantly. And I find that people that go off and try to do this on their own, about 2 to 3 months in, they're like, I think I'm just getting fat. And maybe that's the case. But if you have the guidelines, it can give you a little bit more patience and a little bit more comfort in knowing that you're probably doing the right thing.
Now, do you recommend tracking? Like calorie intake, protein intake?
I do. But I do, let me put it this way. I do at least for 3 or 4 months. So this is not something that will typically be appropriate for a person to do for the rest of their life. And we realize that. However, if you never do it, you probably have no idea what you're taking in.
Yeah.
You don't really know what proper meal composition looks like. You probably don't know what maybe peanut butter really comes to mind. A spoonful of peanut butter can be like 100 calorie difference between your spoonful and my spoonful. And so by tracking at least for a time period, we can gain some real insight into how this affects us. If you have very distinct goals of change, if you really want to change your body composition, you probably need to track during that period. Because if you're not tracking and it stops working, you don't know where it's not working.
Yeah.
And so do we need to track for the rest of our life? No, probably not, but it probably makes more sense to eat ad libitum after learning about these food intakes, how your body reacts to them. And then when you're in more of a maintenance phase or you're happy with where you are. And so then it can become something where you start to intuitively eat, that phrase that we always hear about. But intuitive eating just doesn't work very well when you want to make major changes because, like I said, you don't know what's wrong when it goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, I've heard like nobody intuitively eats their way to 8% body fat. You know, nobody guesses their way to 8%.
You've intuitively eaten your entire life, and that's why you're at 25 to 35% body fat. I mean, that's what you intuitively eating is. And so usually calling it educated eating or something like that probably makes a lot more sense. But yeah, I mean, there are guidelines for where macronutrients should probably be to put you into the right health or the right position to optimally promote, gain lean muscle, and prevent muscle loss in a cut. Proteins are always one of the fun ones to talk about, and you'll usually hear from professionals 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. I think that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have all the nuance of the real distinct answer, but
it's a little high, right? The real answer is like somewhere between 0.7 and 0.8.
Well, it depends. And so it's the 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight is a good thing for general population. It even works in obese people. You can do that, or 1 gram of protein per centimeter of body height. They're both great. I mean, they work really well for just a general recommendation that's quick and easy, and you can just throw it out there. So if there are professionals that say it, and I know a lot that I really respect that actually say both of those, it's the right answer. It's a good answer. It's not the fully nuanced answer. And so a more nuanced answer, if you really want to adjust your nutrition to give you the best return possible, if you're not obese, we want to shoot for 0.72 to about 1.5 grams of protein daily per pound of current body weight in the non-obese. Now, this is influenced and can change based off of age, body composition, whether you're in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus, how lean you are. I mean, there's a variety of factors that actually affect this. I mean, the more lean that you are and the more calorie deficit that you're in, you should probably be in a higher end of that range, at 1 or maybe slightly above 1.
And what's the purpose for that?
So when you're leaner or when you have a calorie deficit, there is your body is potentially going to catabolize muscle because you're in a calorie deficit. It's got to pull energy from somewhere, right? Having more protein in the diet is protective for that. So we want to lose body fat. We don't want to lose our muscle because, as we've talked about, it's hard enough as is to build lean muscle, right? And so by upping those levels, you can prevent some of those issues. You can prevent some of the muscle loss. You may even build a little bit more muscle if you have higher protein intakes. And I mean, we see with even that higher end of that range, that 1.5, you may not build more muscle in a calorie surplus. I mean, 0.72 to 1 seems to maximize that, but you could have better body composition. You could have a little bit less body fat while you do it, if you do that. And so there's a lot of people out there that will say 0.72 to 1 and that's it. And that's a good general recommendation for Gen Pop and everything like that. But there are some benefits to going a little bit higher that we see in the literature that don't necessarily increase lean muscle gain, but they may help with body composition, and it might be something that,
like fat loss.
Yeah, you could have some more fat loss as well as that lean muscle build.
Maybe due to its like satiety effects?
No, it's probably the fact that protein is not really readily stored as body fat. Now, that doesn't mean that if you take an insane amount of protein into a diet, in calories, that the calories in, calories out equation somehow doesn't work. What ends up happening is it shifts the substrate oxidation. And so instead of burning the body, like dietary fat, like you might have been burning at a different level of protein, you're now burning some more of the protein, and so you're now storing some of that fat. And so calories in, calories out still tends to work. It's just for a different reason. So we have these protein needs that vary depending on the situations. And if you know the nuance to it, you can start to make some choices for you. And then that might make people feel a little bit better with, hey, as a leaner individual, as I was losing body fat, I started to feel worse and I started to feel like I was losing lean muscle. And it was because I was told that I only need the 1 gram per pound, and maybe I did need a little bit more because I'm a little bit more of an active person, because I have more lean muscle. And you have to understand too that the information that we have is based off of normal individuals. It's not based off of guys that have a lot of lean muscle or women that have a lot of lean muscle. And so conceivably, because of that, you might have higher protein needs if you have significant amounts of lean muscle. And so for just having a more general answer, it's that nuance is important. And age comes into play too, because as we age, we have a lesser anabolic response to weight training. And so by adding in a little bit more protein, we may be able to counterbalance that a little bit.
Is this what's sometimes referred to as anabolic resistance?
Yeah. And so having some more protein in play can be beneficial. And I know that it's really difficult to get older people to eat protein. And so that's a really big ask. But just so people can understand what the research says and the tools that we have in our toolbox, that can allow you to choose the tool for you, right? And the first thing that I usually hear when I talk about this is, most people will say that max is that 1 gram. When you go up to 1.5 grams, well, isn't that a lot of protein? Will that affect my health? And the answer is no. As a normal person, an otherwise healthy person, particularly those that weight train, we only see benefits with increased protein intake, assuming that you're getting in, the nutrients that you need from other foods. We only see benefits. We only see brain health. We only see bone health. We only see lean muscle, body composition, all those types of things. But it can be confusing, and it's confusing probably for 2 main reasons. We likely know a person that has either themselves or had a grandparent or somebody that has had kidney damage or kidney disease, and their nephrologist has told them, don't eat high protein, it's going to cause problems with your kidneys. And that's true. When you have kidney disease in play, they filter things poorly. And amino acids are one of those things that they filter poorly. And so you will see these people that will hear these recommendations, and unfortunately they're confused with the fact that this does not carry over to healthy people. It's for people with kidney disease. That's the first situation. The other situation is that unfortunately sometimes this carries over to our doctors. And they took a nephrology course in med school, and they learned correctly that in situations with kidney disease, you have to look out for massive amino acid intakes. And so they'll tell people, hey, high protein diets can cause health issues. It's not shown in the research when you have a healthy individual. And, there's a lot of research about it. There's a researcher called Jose Antonio who works at the ISSN. And he's done research that has shown that protein intakes even double what I've recommended here is completely fine from a health standpoint for years at a time. And so this is not a big concern that we have, but it's one that I wanted to address because it's certainly one that gets brought up every time we talk about this type of topic, because that type of thing gets spread around so easily.
Yeah. There was recently a study that came out. I mean, I'm sure it hasn't, I don't know if the consensus on this has changed, but I do recall seeing a study, maybe Menno Henselman's posted it, but that found that even with people with chronic kidney disease that were on higher protein diets saw
typically a net benefit.
A benefit, yeah, either an improvement in longevity. I forget what the outcome was, but
yeah, I mean, it's debatable. And again, this is one of those things where we have a lot of knowledge about nutrition that is hazy, and so we give the best recommendations that we can based off of the information that we currently have. And so for me, if a nephrologist is going to tell somebody, hey, it probably makes sense for you to watch your protein intake because you've got kidney damage. Well, one, how damaged are the kidneys? How are they filtering? Because there's certainly a range of how that's affected. And so we need to figure that out. And then literally listening to the experts is probably the best choice there. I just want to bring this up because if you go to your doctor, particularly maybe a physician that isn't a specialist in this, and they're like, oh, don't eat high proteins because this is going to be a problem, then you can be like, okay, and maybe go find another doctor that works with athletes.
Yeah. Well, for sure. For sure, especially if you're healthy. And right. I guess even within the bucket of chronic kidney disease, I mean, there's such heterogeneity, among the kidney disorders,
certainly.
That you do. It is wise to take a precautionary approach. Okay.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.